Hello, my name is Ryan, and welcome to my channel Counting from Caleb. My friend Sam and I have been collaborating on a series of videos together. However, due to the pressing nature of time, I felt compelled to release this video before the next one I had initially planned to release. We believe that the rider of the red horse may be on the verge of arriving, which is the visible manifestation of the birth pains, and would serve as substantial evidence that we are currently in Daniel's 70th week. Passover to Sukkot isn't a set of disconnected Moedim. It's an ordered covenant process. Passover establishes the lawful basis. Redemption by blood gives the case righteous footing. Unleavened bread enacts separation. A redeemed people exits the old domain and refuses its leaven. First fruits initiates the owner's claim. The pledged first portion testifies the harvest belongs to him. The Omer count measures and matures the record, 7 times 7, until completion prepares the case for public action. Shavuot is the hinge, authorization into actionability, when what was established and proven becomes publishable and executable in public. Teruah is the summons that convenes the world to answer, and Kippur is the restricted boundary day where rival claims are removed and standing is enforced. Sukkot is the installed outcome, dwelling without quarantine, Eden restored, and expanded into tabernacling reality. On May 23, 2025, Philemon Yang, speaking as President of the United Nations General Assembly, said something that matters for understanding the moment. It has been 7 decades since the General Assembly first called for a two-state solution. In other words, this isn't a brand new idea being invented in 2024 to 2025. The basic outcome, 2 states, Israel and Palestine, has been sitting in UN space since the mid-20th century. What's changing now is not the concept, but the container. Over the decades, the UN has repackaged the same goal through resolutions, conferences, and diplomatic frameworks, attempts to make the idea stick in the real world. The current push is another repackaging, a high-level conference process designed to move from principle to implementation toward an irreversible pathway, not just another statement. They've been trying to form this kind of binding framework for a long time. The difference in this phase is that the old idea is being made kinetic, structured into a mechanism meant to produce downstream, on-the-ground effects. In other words, it appears the white horse is ridden, and the red horse is on the doorstep. The attack of October 7, 2023, functions as a catalyst because it didn't change the idea of 2 states. It changed the urgency environment that allowed the idea to be rebuilt into an operational mechanism. The ensuing war in the Gaza Strip became the dominant global crisis framing for moving from ending the war to ending the conflict, which in turn drove the UN track toward a structured, action-oriented conference process rather than another general reaffirmation. That's why, even while Philemon Yang could say in 2025 that the United Nations General Assembly has been calling for 2 states for 7 decades, the phase is characterized by formalized modalities and a designed irreversible pathway approach. And he will Wehigbir, strengthen our cause to prevail, a covenant with the many for 1-7. The hyphal stem of Wehigbir is causative, so the subject is not merely prevailing himself, but causing something else to prevail or strengthen. This is why he will make a covenant prevail, or he will strengthen a covenant, is the better rendering. This is not a one-off enforcement, but an ongoing effect that he causes. Daniel 9:27 doesn't explicitly require a fully consummated, hard treaty to exist before the Shavua Achad, 1-7 starts. What the text does say is, the prince who is to come, makes strong, causes to prevail a berit or covenant with the many for 1-7. That wording describes an action of strengthening across a defined span. It doesn't state he signs a treaty, it's ratified, or it's completed at the front edge. Day 1 is a boundary, not necessarily a headline. The Shavua can begin at a calendar, legal seam, where the strengthening process is already in motion from earlier steps. So day 1 may be quiet, while still being the start of the measured interval. If the Wehigbir action is for 1-7, you don't need fireworks on day 1. You need the process to span the week and be strong enough that by the midpoint it can produce the cause, sacrifice, and offering to cease effect. In my video titled The 7 Seals and 7 Churches, I mentioned that Passover was on April 13, 2025, which aligns with the possible removal of the first seal. Consequently, we might witness some evidence that the rider on the white horse began to ride. Using the sighted crescent moon, the Abib Nissan new moon was sighted in Jerusalem on Sunday evening, March 30th, 2025. Counting forward, Nissan 14 begins at sunset April 12th to sunset April 13th. Nissan 14 is the preparation day, the day the Passover lambs are slain in the afternoon or between the evenings, and the day Yeshua was crucified. I should have been more precise, as the actual Passover meal, which I listed in that video, is the first meal of unleavened bread and eaten after nightfall following the 14th of the month. The 14th of Nisan, when the Passover lamb is slain, is the preparation day and the day Yeshua was crucified, which began at sunset April 12th to sunset April 13th, 2025. I believe this is the point when the white horse began to ride. So what evidence did we see? After October 7th, 2023 and the Gaza war that followed, a lot of governments stopped treating two states as a vague end goal and started pushing for an implementation pathway, something that can run as a repeatable process: meetings, work streams, texts, and recorded comments. You can hear that shift directly in how officials frame the need for an irreversible track and concrete measures, not just statements. So, we're watching for something that behaves like covenant formation by architecture, not a single signing moment, but a framework being turned into a durable operating mechanism. That mechanism is the Berit, covenant or vessel. The track that carries the process generates outputs and steadily draws the many into alignment. To keep it clear, we separate the process we are following into three distinct roles that operate together like a braid. The UN lane provides mandate and legitimacy. The formal track, modalities, official naming, co-chairs, documents, and recorded endorsements. This is the Crown lane. The Global Alliance provides capability, the operational engine that can convene, coordinate, keep cadence, and apply sustained pressure. This is the Bow lane. The Gulf Cooperation Council functions as the block amplifier, a regional mass that normalizes implementation, irreversible steps, and conference language early and widens the buy-in surface for the many. It helps make the pathway feel inevitable rather than an option. When these three strands run separately, nothing locks. The UN can authorize but remain inert without an engine. A coalition can mobilize but needs a recognized lane to store outcomes. A bloc can amplify language en masse but becomes far more powerful when routed into an official mechanism. Wahigbe shows up when legitimacy gives the lane, capability makes it move, and bloc mass expands participation and raises reversal cost. So, let's track some of the major steps of strengthening we are seeing. June 9th, 2024. Before the UN lane is even formally opened, the Gulf Cooperation Council is already using unusually programmatic language. It references the need to end the Gaza war and stresses the importance to take irreversible steps to implement the two-state solution and recognize the state of Palestine. That's not just generic support. It preconditions the diplomatic space to think in terms of an implementation pipeline. September 9th, 2024. The GCC issues a ministerial council statement that explicitly frames the moment as requiring a credible, irreversible implementation path anchored in international law, UN resolutions, and the Arab Peace Initiative. This functions as a block-level normalization. It trains the many to treat implementation language as the baseline rather than optional rhetoric. September 18th through 19th, 2024. UN General Assembly Emergency Session 1024. This is the first international spark for the UN lane. The UN General Assembly decides to convene an international conference under UN auspices. This doesn't mean everything is already built. It means the lane exists in principle. In our symbolism, this is the Crown lane opening. Legitimacy begins as an authorized track even before it's fully named and operational. September 27th, 2024. Saudi Arabia announces a global alliance. This is the bow coming into view, the capability engine. It's a coordinating lane that can gather states, align messaging, and keep momentum moving. Now the process exists in two forms at once, an authorized UN lane and an operational coalition engine. The Global Alliance is designed to keep an international group of states coordinated around implementing a two-state outcome, not just endorsing it in principle. It was publicly launched on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in late September 2024, with the Saudi foreign minister describing it as a coalition that includes Arab Muslim countries and European partners that would meet in places like Riyadh and Brussels. In practical terms, the alliance functions as the convening and coordination platform. It gathers officials, aligns talking points, maintains cadence through the repeated meetings, and develops practical measures to keep the implementation pathway hot. That's why it sits on the bow side. It's the doer lane that can mobilize the many, while the UN conference track supplies the formal mandate record. October 2nd, 2024, we see early braid tightening between the bow and crown. Regional bloc language reinforces irreversible steps and anchors the effort in UN legitimacy framing, international law, UN resolutions, and recognized diplomatic pathways. The point isn't that everything goes live yet. The point is alignment. This widens participation by making the story coherent and institutionally framed. The bow is being routed through the crown language. October 30th through 31st, 2024, capability becomes a machine. The first meeting of the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution. In bow terms, this is the bow becoming functional. Capability is no longer potential. It can operate and sustain cadence. December 3rd, 2024, issued and published as a UN document on December 10th. Assembly Resolution 7981. This is the major crown lane lock. The UN sets the modalities, how the conference will function, appoints Saudi Arabia and France as co-chairs, and crucially, officially names the conference, High-Level International Conference for the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the Implementation of the Two-State Solution. Naming matters because it standardizes the vessel. It's now a titled, indexed, governed mechanism with designated drivers. In Wahigbier terms, this is a reversal cost jump. What's named and proceduralized is harder to quietly unwind. Then comes the hinge we've been looking for. Authority versus motion. April 12th, 2025 is the kinetic threshold. On April 12th, the co-chairs held the first briefing session for UN member and observer states at UN headquarters in New York. This is where the lane becomes kinetic, meaning the track stops being only an authorized plan and becomes an operating process with observable momentum. The chairs act and roll, states begin responding to real schedule, and the process starts generating downstream steps. This is why April 12th is so important in our mapping. It isn't more authoritative than December 3rd, it's more operational. December 3rd is mandate lock, April 12th is mandate in motion. In bow and crown terms, this is where the braid becomes visible. Crown and bow operate together as one outward running lane. On the United Nations UNISPOL page, April 12th, 2025, is the first dated operational step under the conference timeline, so it functions as the point where the conference moves from origins and mandate, authorized on paper, into format and structure, and run as an actual process. April 12th, 2025 fits the first seal, horse riding out overlay, because it's the first moment the mechanism stops being merely authorized and becomes active in motion. In Revelation 6:2, the writer already has the bow in hand, a crown is given, and then the key action happens. He went out, the transition from possession authorization to outward execution. The white horse of Revelation 6:2 is the build and deploy phase of the Wahigbier lane. The crown represents mandate and legitimacy being seated, UN authorization, co-chairs appointed, and modalities set. The bow is the capability engine, the coalition's convening power that can actually move people and keep cadence. And when out is the moment those two fuse into motion. Briefings begin, work streams form, outreach to the many starts, and the process begins generating an outcome text. That's why April 12th, 2025 matters on the UNISPOL timeline. It's the first listed marker where the mandate is no longer just a resolution on paper. It's an operating machine. We aren't given the briefing start and end time, but any portion of it that occurred after sunset in Jerusalem would already be in Nisan 14, the day of the Passover sacrifice by Jerusalem's calendar. If sunset in Jerusalem was about 7:06 p.m., That corresponds to roughly 12:06 p.m. in New York the same day. So, any New York time activity after 12:06 p.m. would map to after sunset in Jerusalem, even though it is still daytime in New York. The calculated Hillel II calendar is the rabbinic calendar, which has been in use by the majority of the Jews at least since 1170 to 1180 AD. These calculations result in months and years that approximate, but are not in complete harmony with the natural lunar and solar cycles. But they are when the majority are observing Yahweh's Moedim, so we need to be alert to these dates as well. The 14th of Nisan, according to the Hillel II calendar, began sunset April 11th to nightfall of the 12th. So here, it may also fit the timing of the white horse riding. After this, we continue to see further strengthening. May 23rd, 2025, a preparatory session follows. This is how strengthening looks in real life. Not one meeting, but a repeatable rhythm that normalizes participation and deepens buy-in. July 28th through the 30th, 2025, the high-level conference convenes publicly at scale. This widens the many through visibility, attendance, and institutional focus. The lane is no longer just preparatory, it becomes a major international focal point. September 10th, 2025, and the vote is adopted on the 12th. The UN General Assembly overwhelmingly endorses the New York Declaration. This is the many on record. Procedurally, this is a major ratchet. Recorded commitments raise reversal cost because they are harder to unwind than statements. September 22nd through 23rd, 2025, International Conference for the Two-State Solution is held. The conference concluded with groundbreaking momentum as heads of state and government and other senior officials from 10 countries announced their recognition of an independent state of Palestine. February 17th to 18th, 2026, is the moment the New York Declaration starts functioning as an active instrument, not just a ratified text. Over 80 states and organizations go on record at UN headquarters framing Israel's Area C measures as an annexation path that must be reversed, and tying follow-on steps to the existing framework. So what are we seeing in simplest form? October 7th catalyzed an implementation push that built a governed UN alliance lane and then ratcheted it into a durable operating pathway through activation, repetition, scaling vote locks, and ongoing block execution. We're watching a covenant framework being formed and strengthened into an operating mechanism with the many, not invented from scratch, and that's what Wahigbeer looks like in action. So, what might we expect next? And when the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse went forth. It was bright red, and its rider was granted permission to take away peace from the earth and to make men slay one another, and he was given a great sword. Because the Shabuah is counted by Tishri years, but the seals are keyed to the Moedim. The seals thread the spring to fall arc inside those years. Spring anchors occur mid-Tishri year, and then the sequence crosses at Yom Teruah into the fall boundary phase, culminating at Yom Kippur. The next Moed in line following Passover is unleavened bread. Using the sighted new moon at sunset March 20th, 2026 makes the first day of unleavened bread the 15th of Nisan, both the high and weekly Sabbath of the feast. The 15th will begin at sunset April 3rd and end at sunset of the 4th. The first day of unleavened bread according to the Hillel II calendar begins at sunset April 1st to sunset April 2nd, 2026. So we need to be alert beginning here, as this is the calendar being observed by the majority today. If the sequential Moedim pattern continues, and we are indeed in Daniel's 70th week, the red horse may be given permission to take peace from the earth and given a great sword on the first day of unleavened bread 2026, and depending on whether it will be according to the Hillel II or sighted new moon calendar is yet to be verified. The watch window should be sundown in Jerusalem April 1st to sundown April 4th. Seals 2 and 3 function like the enabling conditions that make a Revelation 13 beast regime possible and then plausible. The seals don't cause it mechanically, but they create the environment in which the beast can be received as the order restorer, and in which the mark can become enforceable by mid-Shabuah. Think of Revelation's early seals like a story about how a stable world breaks down, and why people would later accept a strong new system to fix it. Seal 2 is when the world loses its normal restraints. For decades, many people assumed there were reliable rules that kept major conflicts from exploding. Alliances would respond, agreements would hold, and rule breakers would pay a price. Seal 2 is the moment that confidence collapses. Protection starts to feel uncertain and conditional. Threats and force become normal tools again. It's not just there's war, but peace is no longer guaranteed by trusted rules. Seal 3 is what happens when that instability hits everyday life. Things become tight and controlled. Food, fuel, money, trade, and access. The key image is scales, meaning life becomes measured and managed. Scarcity isn't just felt, it's administered. When those two conditions combine, fear and disorder, Seal 2, plus controlled scarcity and managed access, Seal 3, a new kind of offer becomes very persuasive. We can bring back stability, but only if you accept our system. That's where Revelation's B system makes sense. It presents itself as the administrator of order, the one that can stop the chaos and make society function again. But it doesn't do it for free. It uses access as the pressure point. Participation in normal life becomes conditional. The mark represents that kind of permission, whether you're allowed to function inside the stabilized system. Seal 2 marks the first visible manifestation of the birth pains as the restraint break becomes evident. It signifies the first contraction, and Seals 2 through 4 collectively represent the recognizable phase of birth pains. Notably, Seal 4 is where I've placed the implementation of the mark of the beast as a counterfeit presence, a rival claim to the indwelling presence. Seal 2 supplies the fear and fracture that makes separation necessary. Seal 3 supplies the scarcity and the gating that makes claim and compliance practical. Together, they prepare the world for a Shavuot hinge where the mark can be implemented as the solution. You may have noticed a slight change to the placement of the 6th and 7th seal from my 7 Seals and 7 Churches video. This is from the combined work between Sam and myself, and I'm pressing to release the video with that new information in the near future. Romans 10:9 through 10, that if you confess with your mouth Yeshua is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. If what we are witnessing is truly the strengthening of the covenant Daniel foretold of, then we may see evidence of the red horse rider emerging very soon. Thanks for watching. Shalom.